At first, my mind was all over the place, and then I asked Blessed Mother to please help me to focus, to really connect, and to go there. I found myself in a beautiful meadow, just beautiful. I was lying on my back looking up at the sky. It was a beautiful sunny day. The grass was blowing back and forth, so green, so perfect, so soft, and the breeze was just right. As I sat up, I saw many children running towards me, laughing in anticipation to greet me. I recognized many of them from my last visit, and the rest were my family members, nieces and nephews and my younger sister. As I got up, they all rushed to embrace me so tightly. I almost was knocked down by the pressure, but it was the love that overwhelmed me. I had a peace that was unexplainable, and my heart was so full, like it was going to burst with joy and contentment as I cried with tears running down my cheeks. It was such a contrast from the sufferings of this world, and I just want to stay there in their arms, not go anywhere, but just stay there. My sister then kissed me on the cheek, so happy to see me, as my nephew grabbed me in my other arm, and all the children smiled with joy and excitement. I looked up, and there was a hill just a short distance away, and there I saw Blessed Mother waving at me to come, with even more children who were around her, jumping up and down with excitement to see me. Annabelle, one of the young black girls from our previous visits, came to me, and then kissed my belly, saying, "Hello, babies." I looked down and I realized I was pregnant in this visitation. It was such a surprise. I knew it was the fulfillment of what the Lord has promised soon to come, but in heaven it's already here. The children with me and my family members began to pull at me to go as well. We all began to run through the meadow, laughing joyously as the children raced to see who can get to her first. Once I finally got to her, she held my belly, like when her and Elizabeth, her cousin, met, and she just laughed with joy as she embraced me tightly. I cried, feeling more comfort in my mother's arms. I held on so tightly. She gasped, as if she said she couldn't breathe as she laughed. She stopped, looked at me, wiped my tears, and kissed my cheeks as I grabbed her again for an embrace. She just held me and rocked me as all the children danced around us, laughing and so excited. I heard her in my heart say, "Remember, here all your tears are wiped away." We then went arm in arm walking towards the beautiful garden cottage. All the children ran ahead and entered to the garden. It was just beautiful. The perfect flowers and colors felt so homey. The children continued to play in the garden as Blessed Mother opened the door for me to come inside the cottage. We sat at an island table. Just then a young boy, the age of 4, ran in and sat next to me and hugged me. He looked at me and at my womb and told the babies, "We're going to be best friends." I laughed as I looked at Blessed Mother, startled, as I wondered who this young boy was. She read my thoughts and responded, "It was Brother James and Hadassah's son. These are 2 other heart-dweller missionaries who have been believing for a child, although doctors say it's medically impossible because of a procedure Sister Hadassah did. But they got a word from the Lord that they would have kids, and even Brother James has seen it in his dreams. He was the cutest mixed boy with brown, sandy, wild, silky hair with big curls, blue eyes, just so handsome with a beautiful smile. I thought to myself, whew, thank goodness he doesn't have Brother James' hair texture." If you guys knew him, you would laugh. It's a joke between us. So I chuckled, excited to tell them about it. Then I wondered, how is it that I'm able to see souls here in heaven who haven't come to earth yet, like the children? I once saw my daughter a few years ago on the mountain. The Lord allowed her to visit me when I was really doubting the promise of me and Father Derek during adoration. I saw a bright light enter the room. This was a closed vision. And from that light came a small young girl, the age of 4 to 5, and she ran and sat next to me, holding my hand, Indian style, worshiping the Lord with me in adoration. I began to sing, and she closed her eyes and lifted her hands in worship as I sang to the Lord. Then she rested her head on my shoulders for a bit, then peeked her head at me, as if to get my attention to look directly at her. So I did. I couldn't make out the details of her face, but I just had a sense she was my daughter. She had a beautiful yellow dress with afro pigtails. And as soon as the song was done, the bright light came, and then I saw Jesus beckoning for her to come back. I looked at her in awe, smiling as she ran to Jesus, thinking they would go. She turned back around and then ran to hug my neck so gently and tightly and kissed my forehead and said, "It's gonna be okay, Mommy. It's gonna be okay." Tears streamed down my face as I realized, oh my goodness, this was my daughter. How could this be? She then giggled and ran back to Jesus, and they were gone. When I opened my eyes, I turned around in the room, just in awe at what I experienced, wondering, was it real? Was it my mind? As the silence of the room was piercing, but such a heavenly sweet presence lingered. I then looked at the floor, and there was a pink baby sock, a 24-month-old pink baby sock. Now mind you, this is on the mountain refuge in Taos. This was the first building we had built. It was a snowy day, and only me and Brother James were there with Mother and Father. We had just started building the community, and we had never gotten any visitors who had infant children. Nor should any infant children clothes be with our clothes. But it was right on the floor, like it was placed there. I just picked it up in shock as I knew it was a very real promise from the Lord, and a very real experience. I still have the sock today taped in my journal as a prophetic promise to one day share and tell my children the story and wait on the Lord's promise for Father Derek and I to be married, and here we are 4 years later living out that answered promise and waiting on the child of promise. God is faithful. Thinking about all of this, I was wondering again, how is it that souls not yet born are here in heaven and able to reason and speak? I know it's a weird question, but I wanted to know. Blessed Mother smiled at me, looked at me knowing my thoughts. She then asked that I share with Hadassah and James about meeting their son, to the couple to encourage them about the Lord's promise, and dreams that they have been given that God is faithful, and they too would see His promise come to pass. The young boy hugged me again and ran outside in the garden to play with the others. Blessed Mother said, "Yes, there are many souls who are here who have not been redeemed yet. They do not grow past 5 years, as they await their arrival on earth, for their parents. Many times the Lord uses them to touch in with their soon-to-be parents for encouragement and hope, just as He allowed you to see your daughter before she is to come to you. You must remember every soul is a thought in God's mind, way before the foundation of the earth. So in fact, we were all created before we were sent to earth. But from the Lord's thoughts then become His words, which manifest us into being. Then His breath that gives us life as we enter into our parents' womb. So it's not at all a weird question, beloved," she said, smiling. "Wow, Mother, amazing." Just then I looked outside. The cottage had huge windows where you can see outside straight into the garden. I could hear the children's laughter as they played and ran so full of joy. The peace and the beauty was just breathtaking, enough to put you in a state of euphoria, really. Then I felt the sorrow again, because what I had to return to. Immediately Blessed Mother said, "I have something that can make you feel better." She had a bowl with several scoops of ice cream. I began to laugh. She got 2 spoons and gave me one. I took a scoop and ate as my eyes grew large. It was the best tasting ice cream, so rich and creamy. And I knew there was no sugar in it to make me sick. Wow, heaven is just wonderful. She giggled too, knowing my thoughts, as we ate away. Then Blessed Mother prompted me to go outside. She grabbed my arm, and we then left the cottage kitchen, entering into the garden. The children continued to play as it sounded like a lively playground. We sat on a makeshift wooden swing, made out of tree branches and flowers. I then leaned back as we swung gently, and I rested my head on her shoulders, admiring the beauty, the children, the love, and the peace that was so amazing. I felt like crying again, not wanting to go back, and still struggling with fear of suffering. Blessed Mother again said to me, "Do not fear suffering, my daughter. It's a part of life, and leads you here to heaven." Just then children ran to us, gathering around us, laughing and giggling. Then Blessed Mother touched my womb again and said, "These children will be a blessing, like a little piece of heaven." knowing that I didn't want to leave this place. She gave me a little piece of heaven instead in my womb. The children that I would have. A light came from her palm into my stomach, and I knew she gave me more than just a blessing, and she knew how badly I wanted to stay. I held onto her arm tightly and kissed it, smiling as all the children laughed and smiled at me. Then I came out of the visitation and was back in my room. I couldn't stop smiling because again there was a residue of the presence of heaven that lingered, giving me a peace and a hope I couldn't explain that I desperately needed.